to talk about independence. I'd like to read you on page 2, your little cheat sheet here, sort of the intro. A young child whom Maria Montessori was working with advised her, "Just help me to do it by myself." Consider the wisdom in this statement. Unspoken subtext. If you give me too much help, I will be dependent upon you to make the right choices in life. I will never become a self-directed, self-empowered person. On the other hand, if you do not give me the help I need, I will not gain the knowledge and skills to achieve my dreams to make a contribution to humanity. One of the most difficult tasks for parents and teachers is to know how, where, and when to give children structure and support, and when, how, and where to provide the child with the space and freedom to become an independent thinker, learner, and healthy relationship builder. In this workshop, we will discuss how you can guide your child to become a successful and self-directed adult. One of the absolute hardest jobs, teachers correct me if you disagree with me, one of the hardest jobs of a Montessori guide is to know when to step in and provide support, structure, guidance, insight to a child, and when to let that child address a problem, whether it's social, emotional, with the Montessori materials. It's the hardest job of the Montessori teacher. And we try to use our observational tools and our intuition, and sometimes, we step in too quickly when we realize that this child could have actually, perhaps I've robbed this child of the ability to dig a little bit deeper, and to solve a problem, or I've let the child, flounder too long. Because have you noticed that American children sometimes get into power struggles with adults? We actually don't ask a question because we want to make the assumption that the child will want to do this lesson, so we simply say, "Oh, now it's your turn," and then we move away. So sometimes we don't ask, we assume. But, the spirit is still there. Any other factors? Yes?
Providing a supportive environment for whatever interests the child.
I'm going to write supportive, and I'm going to link it to the child's interests. Sometimes because as parents, and I certainly did this with my daughters, we superimpose our interests. Like, we all know that we'd like children to have musical appreciation and musical expression. That's part of life. Does it have to be the piano? Because I played the piano? No. It can be, support according to what seems to resonate with the child. I want to go back to this this one about the I messages for a minute, or the I thing. I was going to tell you a striking story, but I think it's relevant. I'm observing a classroom in Phoenix, a 3 to 6, 3, 4, 5-year-old classroom, early childhood, children's house, and a non-English speaking Russian Indian girl had just joined the classroom. She was barely a preschooler. She was really sort of a toddler, but she was obviously capable of being in a preschool class. She watched some children construct the Pink Tower. All of you know what the Pink Tower is, right? Okay. I'm assuming the Pink Tower is, just in case you don't know, is cubes from 10 centimeters to 1 centimeter, 10 of them, that the child actually perceptually grades and stacks up to see if the child's brain has the visual perception and the muscular ability to stack cubes between 10 and 1 centimeter. And the presentation is a vertical tower. This child watches these other children do this. She takes it off the shelf herself without any teacher lesson and perfectly grades the thing across the floor from 10 centimeters to 1 centimeter. Perfectly, but horizontally. What does the assistant teacher and then the lead teacher did the same thing, comes over and goes, "No, dear, in this classroom, we built the Pink Tower this way. This is how we do it. This is what's in my Montessori curriculum guide," even though the child knew how to do it. So I'm over in the corner of the classroom kind of grinding my teeth, saying not very nice words about this assistant and teacher, like, "Would you get away from that child? I'm going to..." And while I'm having these really grueling thoughts about these two adults who are not understanding that the child has already mastered the material, she just sees it horizontally, this 2.5-year-old turns around and looks at me and goes like this, goes... Uh-oh, the kid's in my head. Who is this, reincarnated Incarnation Maria Montessori. This was really scary, and it happened 2 or 3 times, because every time the teacher interrupted her, the child would turn around and look at me and go, morons! You know? I started to think, what else does this child know about me? One of the things that I've been kicking around with Montessori teachers recently, especially teachers of younger children, and I think this applies to parents, when we see a child, this is why I was so proud of that teacher with the trinomial cube, when we see a child, especially one of our children in our family, struggling with something, what's the emotional impact upon us? Often we're not very comfortable.
English.
Yeah. What?
English.
Yeah, anguish. It's like, I don't want to see this child struggling. I'd like to help this child avoid pain. And yet we all would sit here and agree that a certain amount of stress and anxiety and unknowingness and chaos is part of life. That's how you begin to solve a problem. We'd all go, oh yes, that's good for children to be able to experience that. But when it comes to, the rubber hits the road, we step in oftentimes because we're the ones that are uncomfortable without even noticing, well, maybe this child has the resilience to handle this. Just because they're getting antsy or whimpering or something, as long as they're not screaming and throwing anything, it's like, give it a moment. But that takes a lot of self-control on our part, because we resonate with like, oh, I want my child to be successful, and I don't want them to be in this state of not knowing. But we do it. We do it. I mean, one of the things we're not going to get into tonight, but I think it's very, very important to think about how we were parented and how that affects our parenting. The general trend is we either tend to replicate blindly what our parents did for us and to us, or what do?
The opposite.
We overcompensate. I'm not going to give my child any rules because my father was too strict. Whoa, good. It's a recipe for a sociopath. Let me go back to your question. One of the best things I think we can do, and I know a number of you probably have children who, for whatever reason, in certain areas of their life, quit prematurely, give up, yeah? I mean, we all do, don't we? Putting me in front of people in China have been trying to get me on WeChat. I'm doing a lot of work in China for about 6 months now. I'm just lazy when it comes to technology. And it's like, so we all have these little blinders. Telling your child stories, wonderful stories of how people have tried things that were really hard for them. And it can be mythical stories of the little rabbits that did this, or it can be real people stories. But we do not tell children enough stories about character development. We tend to try to manage their behavior. I know you can do this. And yes, there is a time to help the child try it on their own, and there are techniques for that. But the other side is wonderful stories of how people have stretched themselves beyond their comfort zone. And you can even, there's stories for 3-year-olds about how the little whatever character in the story tried to do something that they never did, and then they did it, and all these wonderful things happened. We need to strike their imaginations with stories when we perceive they have a little personality glitch or obstacle, like, I don't want to try, it's too hard, I want you to do it. That's the imagination side of parenting. We don't use that enough. We tend to try to manage them as opposed to inspire them to what human beings are capable of doing. That makes sense. When we see them making the smallest increments, it's giving them feedback about their climb up the mountain is far more important than this. And some of us were parented and schooled with this. You're not making any progress unless you get an A+. Good job, good job, good job. It's like, this is where human beings need the support and the positive feedback when they're struggling to change behavior and learn. And that's a tough change for a lot of adults.